Zeta Gundam. Considered by many to be one of the greatest Gundam series ever made, if not the pinnacle of the franchise as a whole. And I have to say, I couldn't disagree more. It is, in my opinion, the worst Gundam series I've seen. No, I have not seen Gundam Seed Destiny, though. But wait. Before you click off the video or leave me a ton of hate down in the comments, give me some time to explain why I feel that way, and then leave why you think I'm wrong, or right, down in the comments below. I'd love to discuss this, as I know the show is very beloved, and maybe I missed something fundamental or misunderstood some grand message that was trying to be told. I would really love to know why this show is so loved, besides its obvious importance in the longevity of the Gundam franchise as a whole. Anyways, all that aside, welcome to the second episode of Journey Through the Universal Century, the show where I break down what I thought of all the core Universal Century shows in hopes of garnering a discussion in the comments, cause I really need more friends that love Gundam, and really needed to watch these shows so I wasn't killed because I call myself a Gundam fan without seeing them. For anyone who didn't see my first video, please go watch it. Full spoilers ahead, so you've been warned. Watch Zeta Gundam and come back to this video. Full disclosure though, videos in this series may end up being multiple parts, as while I'm happy with how the first video turned out, I really want to give these shows the justice they deserve in my videos, especially ones that I don't enjoy when I know they have like a beloved fan base behind them, which may cause them to run a little long, thus being split into multiple parts. Hey, editing me here, and yeah. Let's just say I have a lot to say about the characters in this show, so this is going to be part 1 and only cover characters. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into the video. I made it pretty clear in the first episode of this series that a good cast of characters is really important to me and can easily sway my opinions on a show. I feel Zeta Gundam is a prime example of that, as it has an okay plot and themes. We'll talk about that in a bit. A few really cool mobile suits, and that same old school animation has really grown on me as I've been watching these shows, but what I feel it lacked was a really good cast of characters to complement that, and some stupid story decisions regarding those characters. But we'll cover all that right now. Let's start with Kamille. Kamille is a weird character to me, as he goes through an extensive arc and develops a lot, leading to some good moments. But I just feel like he is unbearable a lot of the time, and no time period in the show is he more unbearable than everything pre-4's introduction to the show. In fact, to me, he seemed borderline psychotic, or at least unable to control his emotions at the start. Jerid makes fun of his name, so he proceeds to punch Jerid, who would have thought something that insignificant would lead to the rest of Zeta Gundam. But Jerid is a military officer. Obviously, he gets arrested, and upon being let go, punches the dude that was interrogating him, and runs away, steals the Gundam Mark II, threatens to step on that same officer, which would, kill him. All in the first 2 episodes. Sure, it turns out he stole and threatened the villains of the show, but I didn't know they were the villains yet. I'm supposed to root for this guy? They try to develop him by, explaining the stressed family life he lived that plays into vilifying the Titans later as they take his mom hostage, like the evil organization they turn out to be. And that leads to the death at the hands of Jerid, which helps push their rivalry, Kamille and Jerid's rivalry, that is, and though we all know how that one turns out. And for a while in the show, he proceeds to be a whiny asshole to pretty much everybody, and even seems to be against fighting, even though he chose this life. And that's what drives me a little nuts, is the fact that unlike Amuro, from the beginning, Kamille chose to fight, yet seems to be against it sometimes and gung-ho about it other times. It's exhausting to watch and try and understand his motivations and feelings that seem to change on a whim. Kamille begins to mellow out, though, as we approach the Hong Kong City arc, where Kamille, to me, is at his best. Kamille and Ford begin to fall in love, although at a creepily fast pace, but this is where Kamille really mellows out, and he starts to stop acting like a spoiled brat and instead try to understand people, especially Ford, who turns out to be a cyber new type. But that's a whole other can of worms for later. He then begins to mature and have a greater understanding of situations, himself, and others, and that at times leads him to actually be a pretty decent character whose outlook on the world is evolving and can sometimes help freshen things up. But the end all be all is that Kamille has some spurts where he is really interesting and enjoyable to watch, but almost the entire rest of the show, he's just a major pain that is borderline unbearable. As he makes majorly emotional and bonehead decisions, it's hard to write a cohesive piece of this script about him. 'Cause I remember all the ups and downs he had. This just gives me so many mixed emotions about him as a character. Anyways, we'll probably talk more about Kamille, though, as we cover all the characters in the plot. So let's move on for a character that he interacted with a lot. Fa. Where Fa came off as the nice girl, if not insistent on saying Camille's name a million times.
Kamille! 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 Kamille!
That would be an emotional grounder, similar to Frau Bo, in the minute we get to know her in the first episode. Little did I know when she came back into the show 9 episodes later, she would be completely unbearable. Fa proceeds to nag and attack Kamille constantly throughout a large portion of the show, and most of the time Kamille didn't even do anything. It doesn't make any sense. She is a constant annoyance, and she constantly steals the Methus too, claiming, "I'm a pilot too," and then she clearly sucks, as she always has to be saved and wrecks the Methus multiple times. Even after she's taken care of the 2 war orphans, Shinta and Kum, for long enough to essentially become the mother figure, who even agrees with the rest of the crew that she wasn't meant to be a pilot, and that she's much better in her position as a caretaker, she sorties and almost dies multiple times after that, which just left me sitting there asking myself, didn't we just cover the fact she shouldn't be piloting? What the hell? While she's definitely more emotionally stable towards the end of the show, the large portion where she just seems like a ticking time bomb drove me absolutely crazy. Similar to Kamille, she isn't completely awful by the end of the show, but she still sucked for the majority of it. And as a reverse of getting better like Fa did, let's talk about Jerid. Jerid started off pretty annoying with his obsession with Kamille, but it really seemed like his character was going to go somewhere with his dream of leading the Titans. I mean, in the middle of the show, Jerid actually had a reason to hate Kamille so much. Kamille consistently killed every woman that Jerid loved in the show. This leads to Jerid having his dream that he wants to fulfill because of the women he trusted that believed in him, and his rivalry with Kamille makes sense. The downfall of Jerid is the fact that none of this ever goes anywhere, and it eventually devolves into Jerid just constantly trying to kill Kamille, and at the end of the episode going, "I'll get you next time." And he does it in whatever new mobile suit the Titans will give him, since he seems to get 1,000,000 of them. And Jerid Lee also seemingly forgets he had this other dream to, lead the Titans, and just focuses on killing Kamille, which makes him super one-dimensional and annoying, leading to him eventually dying like a chump in the final battle in the Bound Dock of all suits. Speaking of people that died in the final battle, though, let's move on to Katz. Katz. Oh, Katz. He is the only one of the 3 orphans from 0079 to get significant screen time in Zeta Gundam, and frankly, I wish he hadn't been in the show at all. Katz was completely unbearable in this show, and I don't even understand what role he was supposed to play other than practically sabotaging the Argama. Not that basically every character didn't cause some kind of problem for the Argama. He was just a brat, and I don't understand his infatuation with Sarah. I want to blame it on something to do with new type connections, but he literally spends the whole show fawning over an enemy that is attempting to kill his friends, and then Sarah is also completely infatuated with Sirocco, and then it all leads to Katz dying like a chump. But let's go to the man Sarah fawned over, Sirocco, and not just him, but one of the major things that made Zeta Gundam hard to watch for me, and that's the lack of explanation for any of the major villains. I watch the whole show and feel like I literally have no connection or know basically nothing about the three main leaders of the antagonist factions. I felt 0079 had a little bit of a similar problem, but nothing nearly as bad as Zeta Gundam. Let me explain, and please, if I miss something specifically in Zeta, not Stardust Memory or a manga or the wiki that explains something, just singularly in the show, then let me know in the comments. The three main villains are Basque, who's the leader of the Titans, Sirocco, who's leader of the Jupiterists, that is part of the Titans, and then he kind of like takes them over from the inside, and then Hamon Karn, which is the leader of Axis/Neo Zeon. These are who I would consider our main antagonists. Sirocco and Hamon more than Basque, because Basque is barely in the show except for a couple episodes, and then he dies. Now let me break down what I know about these characters, that for all intensive purposes are supposed to be super important to the show. Basque, he is the leader of the Titans and has a bunch of evil plans to help him establish the Titans as a dictatorship over the universe, similarly to Zeon. That's all I can pick out from watching the show. His position and what he wants to do. No motivations or deep insights, just, hey, look at this guy. He's bad, and he wants to do bad stuff. He's barely even present for much of the show. And just like so many other characters. And in the end, he dies like a chump. Sirocco, he's a new type from Jupiter that wants to take over the Titans so he can rule in his image. He has a great control over his new type abilities and can use them to influence others, especially women, I think. Again, that's it. Not why is he doing this? What's his philosophy? What makes him tick? I literally know nothing about this guy except that he's from freaking Jupiter and that he's a new type. And lastly, Hamon Karn. And this feels the most egregious, as it's obvious something went on between Char and Hamon since we last saw Char. And she's, I think, manipulating Minerva so she can basically be in control while Minerva is the figurehead of if Neo Zeon takes over. But we really never get an explanation of what the relationship between Char and Hamon was, which really confuses me and really takes some of the tension out of their scenes together, as while there's obviously something going on, I have no idea what that is. So I'm asking more questions in my head than being affected by the tension of the scene. I now know that the explanation is in something called Char's Deleted Affair, but I would have never known that existed if I didn't look it up after it was glaringly obvious we were missing something, and I shouldn't have to read that to understand everything. That's stupid, and it's not been released in English, so I can't read it. So basically, she's the leader of Neo Zeon that has some tense relationship with Char that you wouldn't understand unless you read a spin-off manga. She's a super powerful new type, and again, that's all you get for her character. Do you see where I'm going with this? These are your major villains, and if you didn't read or watch some spin-off content, or maybe read the entire wiki page, you can completely miss any motivation or backstories, or frankly anything about these characters. They are your main villains. I should know more about these characters, at least by the end of the show. I should have a reason to care. But at least in my experience of watching Zeta, not only do I not care, but I'm frustratingly confused. But we can't talk about my least favorite and confusing characters without talking about the worst of the worst. A character that literally makes me want to puke just thinking about her. Reccoa Land. What the hell was Tomino trying to do with Reccoa Land's character? She started off similar to Emma Sheen as a strong female member of the AEUG. Well, Emma defected to the AEUG, but that was pretty early in the show, so my example stands. She had this weird relationship with Kamille, as Kamille saw her as like a mother figure that he was also in love with. I don't want to get into that. Early Kamille is weird. But she wasn't having any of it, and is eventually sent to do a scouting mission in Amuro, where she meets Kai, but they're both eventually captured, and she has to be saved by Kamille, but then her personality kind of shifts a little, where she is still similar to how she was, though she seems shaken by her failure, and is kind of hitting on our boy Quattro Pagina, but it barely felt like anything, and she volunteers for the mission to stake out the Jupiterists next. But while on this mission, she's caught by Sirocco, who slaps her, and then I think puts some kind of new type mind whammy on her, as that is the only way I can understand the fact that she is now head over heels for this dude, who is the enemy, and slapped her. And this is where everything falls apart. She just starts constantly talking about how she needs to be fulfilled as a woman or something, and that no one on the Argama cares, and I'm just sitting there like, excuse me, what? You never cared before. In fact, you were more like, I'm an independent woman at the start. And now you're saying you need the love of a man or some crap to feel fulfilled? You are on a military vessel, not the Bachelorette. What did you expect? And where is this coming from? You never cared before. She then proceeds to fake her own death, join the Titans, and become Sirocco's side piece to the point where she literally abandons everything she was fighting for and believed in by gassing a colony. Why? It makes no sense. The best explanation I could come up with is that Sirocco can alter women's minds or something with his new type abilities. It just feels like it comes out of nowhere and that there's no solid reasoning for a character to literally 180 so fast it made me dizzy. Thank God Emma kills her. But that's enough with negativity, alright? I don't want to leave everything negative, so let's talk about the developments we see in Quattro Pagina, aka Caswell Rim Daikun, aka Char Aznable, and Amuro. Char is definitely the most interesting character in Zeta Gundam for me, as he plays such a drastically different role than in 0079, and we see a lot more of him. His few interactions with Amuro were some of my favorite moments in all of Zeta Gundam. I think Char's character arc from pseudo-villain that just wanted to kill the zombies to hero in the AUG is an interesting evolution. He is a kind of a mentor to Kamille, at least in the beginning, before they become pseudo-equals, but one of the most interesting parts of Char's characterization throughout the show is his complex with using his identity as Casval to make political change. I think this is an interesting dive into his character as it shows that he fears or doesn't enjoy the political aspect of his life, but has the potential to do so much good with it. This is especially pointed out by Amuro and even Kamille as they push him to be a good leader and use his influence to help achieve spacenoid independence and peace. This ultimately leads to his speech in the episode Day of Dakar, which was amazing, but at his heart, Char just wants to fight in a giant red mobile suit. But everyone else is pushing him to take responsibility and use his identity to better mankind. I think this all culminates in a Char who, after seeing all the atrocities by the end of Zeta Gundam and him almost dying, decides to take the idea of using his identity to quote-unquote fix things to the absolute extreme. And that might be how we get the Char and Char's counterattack. But that's for a video that's not this one. As for Amuro, though, I have to say, the arc he underwent was very interesting to me, in that after the war and killing Lala, he has been essentially locked up in a giant mansion and has kind of accepted it as he doesn't want to fight and is scared of going into space for the fear he'll see Lala again as a new type ghost. This leaves Kamille to be ashamed of the person Amuro has become. Similar to, I think Katz feels a similar way too, but F that guy, we're not talking about him. And he eventually helps kick Amuro back into gear and get his fighting spirit back. I think Amuro's interactions with Char, though, are my favorite, as they seem to have come to respect each other and have a somber bond over the death of Lala. I think my favorite part, though, is their conversation after 4 dies, when they both realize that they've let the same tragedy they underwent with Lala happen again. It helps reinforce the idea that Amuro and Char fought so hard to change things during the 1-year war, but then stopped taking active roles, and as a result, the Titans rose up, who instead of wanting to rule everything from space like the zombies, wants to rule everything from Earth. It's a cycle they let happen. There's a lot of other characters that I could probably talk about too, but this section went on for a long time, and I think it's long enough to turn into its own video. So please like and subscribe so you don't miss part 2 when I cover the plot and the mobile suits in maybe a shorter part. I'd love to hear what you thought of the video, though, and discuss Zeta Gundam down in the comments below. So I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.